The history of propaganda, from ancient Rome to social media. For as long as humans have wielded power, they've also sought to shape perception. To control not just territory, but truth. This is the story of propaganda, the art of influence, from the empires of antiquity to the algorithms of today. Rome, the birthplace of imperial messaging. Augustus adopted the title Divi Filius, son of the divine, to reinforce his status as the adopted son of the deified Julius Caesar, using it prominently on coinage and public messaging. His statues and portraits across the empire presented an idealized, eternally youthful image, less like a real man and more like a god-king meant to inspire awe and loyalty. Brown University Wikipedia. Coins were a daily, tangible medium through which Augustus could broadcast his divine favor, military victories, and the prosperity he brought, reaching even the most distant corners of the empire. Men of Pompeii. He employed symbols like Mars, Venus, Victoria, Pax, and Capricorn to evoke divine endorsement, victory, peace, and eternal destiny, and inscriptions such as IMP Caesar DVF Cos 6 Libertatis PR Vindex linked him to divine lineage and Rome's liberty. Reddit. Huge public works like the Era Pacis, Altar of Augustan Peace, Bringer of Peace, and Divinely Sanctioned Ruler. Eastern and Western Christianity. In the Eastern Orthodox tradition, icons were regarded not as mere decoration but as liturgical instruments, literal windows to the divine, crafted and consecrated under strict guidelines. These images portrayed saints, biblical narratives, and cosmic duels between good and evil, making abstract doctrine tangible to worshippers. These images conveyed salvation, sin, judgment, and redemption clearly and powerfully, often in the form of doom paintings, Last Judgment scenes, prominently displayed in churches as constant moral reminders that obedience meant heaven, and sin meant hell. Wikipedia. Priests and monks preached in vernacular languages, using vivid, emotionally charged storytelling that emphasized obedience to church teachings and the looming threat of divine punishment for sinners. History. Rise. Rituals such as baptism, confession, Eucharist, and indulgences reinforced obedience through sacraments understood as both spiritual necessity and moral discipline. Church doctrines, like original sin and the 7 deadly sins, cemented moral categories and established the clergy as gatekeepers of salvation. Cathedral architecture and stained glass served as immersive environments encoding theology. Soaring vaults, stained glass windows, and sculptural programs narrated biblical events and sacred history, instructing the illiterate faithful and inspiring devotion through sensory awe. Paintings such as doom scenes placed the consequences of moral choice before congregants, literally at the entrance or behind them during worship, reinforcing awareness that good leads upward to heaven, evil sends downward to damnation. Gutenberg and the printed word. Invented around 1450 by Johannes Gutenberg, the movable type printing press revolutionized communication. Before then, manuscripts had to be painstakingly hand-copied, an expensive, slow, and often fragile method of retaining ideas. Gutenberg's innovation enabled consistent, accurate, and mass production of texts, transforming knowledge into a powerful, durable commodity. Within just a few decades, printing presses spread rapidly across Europe. By 1500, more than 20 million copies had been printed, across some 200 cities, making books, pamphlets, and broadsheets widely available for the first time. This technology sparked cultural shifts, from the Renaissance to the Protestant Reformation. Scholar Elizabeth Eisenstein described print as an agent of change, enabling the permanent revival of classical and scientific texts that previously vanished after manuscript struggles. The Protestant Reformation, beginning famously with Martin Luther's 95 Theses in 1517, relied on print to distribute radical thought. Pamphlets, sermons, and translations, even in the vernacular, spread rapidly, giving ordinary people access to theological debate and alternative points of view. Luther's German Bible, New Testament in 1522, Complete Bible by 1534, was printed in the hundreds of thousands and read aloud to millions, fueled by a printing boom in Wittenberg that made religious ideas more accessible than ever. Pamphlets, sometimes called Flugschriften or flying writings, were short, cheap, portable, and visually impactful. They included woodcut illustrations and delivered bold messages in a form designed for rapid diffusion among the literate and semi-literate alike. These tools served both sides. Luther and other reformers flooded the public space with polemics, while Catholic apologists and the Counter-Reformation camp responded with printed refutations and denunciations. The index of prohibited books and book bans emerged as a direct reaction to the power of print. Empire and nationalism, what began as battlefield markers or military insignia, evolved into national banners. By the 18th and 19th centuries, flags came to embody collective identity, sovereignty, and cultural memory. Their colors, symbols, and shapes often tell stories about history, religion, and aspirations, what the nation is, or hopes to become. Flying a flag became a routine act of belonging, what political scientist Michael Billig called banal nationalism, where visual symbols quietly reinforce national identity in everyday life. National anthems, like flags, sparked emotional unity. Whether linked with military victories or collective identity, anthems articulate values, history, and pride in a musical form. Encyclopedia Britannica. Slogans and mottos, like Jai Hind in India or Shema Yisrael, serve similarly succinct functions, branding a shared identity and animating collective belief. Nation building frequently relies on more than symbols, it relies on stories. Founding myths, legends of revolutionary heroes, and narratives of struggle shape collective memory. These myths often gloss or dramatize history in favor of unity and moral purpose. For example, European nations cast their historical struggles in heroic terms. The Antemural Christianitatis myth depicted Balkan states as Christian bulwarks defending against Ottoman Islam, a narrative mobilized to evoke sacrifice, unity, and religious identity. Banners, medals, public monuments, battle scenes, and murals have long conveyed patriotic themes, often depicting national heroes and symbolic victories. Print media, newspapers, pamphlets, magazines, were used to demonize enemies, promote war bonds, and disseminate official narratives through emotionally charged content that supported national efforts. Radio emerged as a vital propaganda tool. Live broadcasts of speeches, wartime updates, and public appeals were used to bolster morale and create emotional connection. FDR's fireside chats exemplified this in the US, while BBC and Voice of America targeted both domestic and occupied audiences. Governments also used radio to target enemy populations, broadcasting demoralizing messages across front lines or occupied regions. Governments produced propaganda films to educate and mobilize. Frank Capra's Why We Fight series explained U.S. war aims and rationale, originally for soldiers but also shown to civilians. Allied studios shipped top directors, like John Ford and George Stevens, to produce war films supporting public morale and collective identity while shaping documentary tradition.